So today I'm going to tackle the biggest question that people have when they are entering the government market or when they're stuck in trying to figure out how do I get over the hump. They're always asking me this question: how long is it going to take for me to start winning government contracts? Typically they mean how much coaching is it going to take or whatever it is. But the question really comes down to a handful of other questions that I like to ask. It's one of the reasons why we do a consultation with people, just to kind of get the answers to these so we can judge not only how long is it going to take, but how effective can we be at helping you actually win contracts. So the first question that I like to ask is this: how mature is your company? Are you a startup, or have you been around for 20 years or somewhere in between? And how mature is the company? So let's say you're a startup and maybe you're even transitioning. So we do get a lot of people that call us and they're transitioning from the military. They're transitioning out of a job. Maybe they've worked in government and they are going to start their own company. Well, it's going to take that person longer to win a contract than it's going to take a company that's been in business for 10, 20 years, something along those lines. It's just going to take them longer. There's a lot more groundwork they need to lay. It also depends on how much have they done. So just because you're a startup doesn't mean you haven't done anything. I reach out to people all the time that are startups that you would think on the surface there's a big ramp up time. But let's say they've already been doing their homework in the background. They've read some books. They've done some training. They've got their website going. They figured out their NAICS codes. They've done some research on who buys what they sell. So depending on what you've done, where you are, will determine a lot of how I answer the question of how long it's going to take to win a contract. Again, if you're mature and you have been winning contracts, or let's say you have other clients. So you have other clients in the commercial world or whatever, you have some great past performance, it's going to be easier for you to win contracts because you've laid a lot of that groundwork than the person that's starting from zero. So think about that for a minute. The next question that I like to tackle is, how strong is your pipeline? So again, if you're brand new to government contracting, maybe you don't even have a pipeline. Maybe you don't even know who buys what you sell. And so these are things we have to figure out. So if you're new, it's going to take us longer to build a pipeline than it is for somebody who's been in business. They have a pipeline, but let's say they're just not converting them. So they're not winning proposals for some reason. So they have opportunities in their pipeline. They have qualified them. They're talking to the customer, but they can't get it over the finish line. We can tweak that process and win faster in that situation. So in that situation, maybe we can make a few tweaks and they can win a contract in the next 30, 60 days. Could be that fast. It all depends. It also depends on the quality of that pipeline. So if I look at the pipeline with you and I start asking you questions and you don't know the answers to the questions, like, well, how long have you been talking to the customer? What do you know about the project? Tell me about the conversations you've had. Who do you know that could team with you on this? And you're like, I don't know. Why is this in your pipeline? I don't know, because it's our NAICS code. So if those are the questions, then you probably don't have a healthy pipeline. But that doesn't mean we have to throw it out the window. We can still look at that and figure out, okay, well, maybe out of the 20 opportunities you have in here, maybe there's only 10 that are really qualified, and let's drill down a little bit deeper in that. So the more you have in your pipeline, the faster you can actually start winning. The more qualified they are, the even faster you'll start winning. So that's another question we like to talk about. The next question I like to tackle is, how big is your team? So if your company is just you, and you're going to have to do the market research, you're going to have to finish working on your past performance write-ups. You're going to have to finish your website. You're going to have to work on your capability statement and your graphics and all those kind of things. If you're doing all of that, it's going to take us longer to win because you can't devote as much time to the actual sales process, to the RFP process. Maybe you can only respond to 4 RFPs a month initially versus a company that has a small team, and we can respond to 20 or 30 RFPs. So it all depends on how big your team is on whether you can move quickly or not. The next question is, do you know anyone in the market? Do you have a network built already? Again, and this is a common theme for this particular video, is if you are starting at ground zero, it's just going to take longer. There's that much more work you need to do. If you have a network, it's going to accelerate that for you. So let's say you're coming from DoD, or you're coming from a government service job or the military or something along those lines. The odds are, even if you don't have connections you can go back to, you know the market a little bit better. That's going to help you accelerate. So how much you know about the market makes a big difference. If you come to me and say, I don't know anything about government, but my cousin's best friend's dog walker told me that I should get into government contracting because there's a lot of money in it. Well, they're probably right, but you don't know anybody. It's going to take us a little bit of time, not only for you to know them, but for them to get to know you. And so that impacts the speed at which you can go in government contracting. The next question is, how big is your market? So if you are in a very niche category where there's not a lot going on in that market, it's probably going to take longer to break into it. So assume for a moment that you've done the research and there's $1 million of sales a year, and there's 3 or 4 players in there, and they've kind of captured the market. It's going to take you longer to figure that out, to break in there, to help the government understand why you are different, why you're unique, to get clear on those differentiators, and to help you separate yourself from them to win contracts. Now let's assume for a moment that you provide a product or service and the government spends $1 billion a year on it. It's a much bigger market, a lot easier to break into, a lot more opportunity in that market. So we take a look at that market to not only figure out who's buying what you sell, but how much, and also when. That's another important factor, because I've seen clients before where we take a look at the market and we notice that, hey, the government only buys in this really small window. So there's this really small window in Q2 or Q3 where they buy the bulk of your product or service. Now, that's not everybody. A lot of times it kind of looks like this. You know, the government's just constantly buying these products and services. But if you're in a situation where they only buy 1 or 2 times out of the year for whatever reason, then it's going to lengthen your sales process. And so that's one of the things we want to know when we are looking at it. The other thing, and this is the final question that I always ask, is let's actually talk about your product or service. Do you have something that is groundbreaking, brand new technology, or do you have something that's been around for a while? If you sell IT services, infrastructure, that sort of thing, that's an easy sell. Call centers, staffing, that's an easy sell. The government's putting out dozens, if not hundreds, even thousands of RFPs for that type of work all the time. It's always coming out. Now, let's say you just invented the world's greatest data collecting tool that you have to shoot off in a rocket into space, and it collects this data and it sends it back down to the Pentagon for them to figure out what's going on around the world. That's great. It's awesome. Maybe the greatest technology. They don't know they have a problem. They don't know they need you. They don't know you. They never heard of you. Your stuff is not tested. The government's risk adverse. It's going to take us a while to break into that market. And depending on when you approach us in the buying cycle, we may say, look, the budgeting process just ended. So we're literally right in the middle of the next budgeting cycle. It's going to take us a year, 2 years, 3 years to not only convince the government that there's a problem here, but also that, hey, you've got the solution. This is what they should be buying. Now, let's roll this back for a moment and talk about new technology. So let's say you just invented a new body armor. It's a new body armor. It's lighter. It's better. It deflects, 80% more bullets, whatever the case may be. It can deflect larger bullets, that sort of thing. That's a problem that you can easily communicate to the government. Very, very easily communicate to the government and say, look, you're already buying something similar. This is just better, and here's why and how and all those kind of things. That's not a 2-3 year buying cycle. That may be a 6-month buying cycle. Maybe faster because it's going to help troops on the ground. It's going to save lives. And so it really depends on what you're selling, how important it is to like troops on the battlefield, that sort of thing. When I'm shooting this, the coronavirus crisis was still going on when we shot this video. And so, if you had something that was a rapid test or something like that you developed in a lab that would just blow everybody's mind of how good this thing worked, you can get that into the government really, really quickly. So, it really depends on what you're selling to the government, what they already have. Do they have something similar, or is this brand new technology? Again, remember, they are risk adverse. So when you go through all of these questions, you can start to formulate a time frame. And so a lot of times people think it's going to take them 12 to 18 months to figure out the government. My job, my partner Josh's job, is to accelerate that 12 to 18 month time frame down to 6 months. Then from there, how do we take the questions we just answered and figure out, can we do it even faster? Can we get it into 3 months? Now, you may not be able to win a multi, 7-figure contract in that 3 to 6 month window, but you should be winning contracts in 3 to 6 months. Most of the people I talk to should be winning contracts in 3 to 6 months. Again, understand, if you answered some of those questions that I asked previously and you're like, man, we're in the startup mode, or we've got a lot of work to do before we can even approach the government, it's going to take more time. It may take you 12 months. A lot of times it's going to take you 12 months before you start really hitting home runs. The work you do today should produce fruit 6, 12, 18 months from now. And so we're not doing work to win contracts tomorrow, although we hope we can. We're doing contracts so that we can start to ramp up the business, so that you start to kind of gain this momentum. And as you start to grow, the momentum almost becomes unstoppable. And that's what we're going for when we work with clients. It should be what you're shooting for, even if you're doing this alone. You should be focused on the long term, on how the work you're doing today will impact the future. So if you have any questions about this, as always, reach out to me. I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm happy to walk you through some of these questions and see what your number should look like. Because again, that number is different for everyone. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it, share it, comment on it, let your friends know about it. And we appreciate you and look forward to hearing from you.